So we are officially starting our budget and finance committee meeting at 7:33, and today is Monday, May 9th, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on August 25th, as per our instruction and regulation, we publicly announced that we would have a public hearing for the 2023 tax budget as required by the state. This is the tax budget that must be submitted to the county by July the 20th of this year. The purpose of the public hearing is, of course, to be able to receive input from the public if they have any feedback on it. Also afterwards to ask if there are any questions that are asked by council. After that, the public hearing will close. This proposed budget would then be submitted to council, the next council meeting, for what I would assume would be the proposed three readings, which the first reading would be next Monday, the next one in the only scheduled council meeting in June, and then finally the last one in July. It would be then voted on, and then our finance manager would then submit it to the county.
Okay. Can someone take notes? Because Marjorie normally does, or do something next.
Pardon me?
Do I need to do something next?
No, not right. I mean, no one is present, so if there are no questions regarding this, then we can actually close the public hearing in a couple of minutes if you desire, to give people perhaps a couple of minutes to
We'll wait just
answer.
a little
Right.
I'm sorry, what did you say the subject of the public hearing was? I guess I was lost.
So the subject of the public hearing is the 2023 tax budget. It's a requirement that the city must submit to the county on a yearly basis. This is not the expense budget, which will be discussed in September. This is the proposed tax budget. This actually will basically, what this does is reflect what we anticipate to be the revenues, specifically from our real estate taxes, because that's primarily what the county's looking at.
I might at least give it 5 minutes.
Do you have a copy of the agenda that's not a PDF, something that I can type on?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I would propose probably one more minute, and then afterwards we can close the public hearing and move on to the rest of the items in the agenda.
Okay. Okay. So we can start with our agenda. Give me just a second. I'm trying to send Mary Jo a Word document of the agenda. I need to transpose it back because I didn't save it as a. Oh, yes, I did. Here we go. So the first item on our agenda tonight is, well, now that we've closed our public hearing, is the status of the budget report. And I'll default to Kirsten and Mr. Mosby.
Okay, you have the status of the budget report and then the March report. What are you considering the status of budget report? Just go over the expense and revenue? And if that's what this is, then I don't understand what the March report is. I'm sorry.
No, I thought you were giving us a report on the audit.
Correct, okay, correct. So,
Okay, I was in contact with Robin today, who is our CPA, and she's on target now. Amos from the state auditor's office was out. He was just coming back in, I think, late today, so she'll give us a status update, but she is still on track of having the Hinkle report filed by Friday.
Okay.
And as of right now, they're holding on to the letter, so they're not going to submit that.
Okay, so if we don't get it in by Friday, are they submitting it?
they likely would, however, they've been in touch with Robin, so they are very aware of the status, and so it is not likely that there would be any reason to. She's already done all of the reconciliations already through December of 2020, so that is the biggest part of it, and that part is already accomplished. So now it's just basically the report that we're talking about is compiling the notes, and then some of the details, like, for example, the specifics surrounding certain debts and things like that. But it will look very similar to the 2019 report that you all that have already been given to you. So at this particular point, there's no reason that there would be any delay to submit it before Friday, or
Good.
after Friday, excuse me.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Mosby, is this a report that was supposed to be due in April 30th? Is that what you're talking about for
That
next?
is correct, yes.
Okay. And then also, I was taking notes, so who's Robin?
Robin is the CPA that I know that we've talked about several times. She's the one that we have hired to compile the reports and submit everything.
Okay, so she's been with us since Ari left then?
She has not been with us. She's a CPA that we have contracted with. She's actually up in, her office is in Chillicothe.
Okay, thank you.
And then you can go right into the March report if no one else has questions.
Okay, I know you just have your reports printed out, so if you want to just take a few minutes and look over those, and if you have questions, we'd be glad to answer those for you.
I'm sorry. I thought I turned the whole document, but I only turned the first page. For those of you looking on the computer.
Madam Chair, I don't have a copy of the report.
It should be in
Oh,
your
never.
email.
Somebody put it here and I didn't even see it. Thank you,
Whoever copied it, I printed one copy.
I didn't even see it.
It's really a lot to digest since you guys we only got it today. So we can,
Madam Chair,
yes.
you are correct, and, one of the things that I know that both Kirsten and I were trying to work with, and I think that moving to the uniform accounting network is going to help this tremendously. But to simplify, basically, the two reports that she did give, one of the reports, what I would consider, I'll call it the thinner report. You'll notice that it basically is the summary of the receipts that we have received, because every time we receive money, it has to be received into an appropriation. And so we have a separate listing of the appropriations in which we receive the money, which is the smaller one, and then the expenses of what we have paid out is the thicker report. And so I do understand and appreciate that there are a lot of numbers associated with that. I think probably the key that you would look at, this is, we're already into the first quarter, basically. So when we're looking at the expenses, I don't want to say that it's a straight across the board. It should be about 25% because there's several reasons that there may be some adjustments to that. But especially for the newer members, Councilmember Alexander, when you're looking at this report, basically what you'll notice, and excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the thicker expense report right now. So when you're looking down the report, the key is going to be to look at the bottom where you see it says Department 101 Police. So basically, that number is the sum of all of the other numbers above it. So for the police department, so far this year, combined year to date, we have expended, according to what's in the system, combined year to date, $202,923. Now, to be clear, we're into May, so this only is going through March at this particular time. All
Which
right.
is the first quarter, which is fair.
Correct. That is correct. And so that same principle would apply to every listing that you see. So if we go to 102 on the second page, you'll see that that is the fire. So year to date, the fire has, they have combined expenses from the general fund, they have combined expenses of $32,675. That number, for example, is a number that basically what we're using with the general fund, we're using the money for the general fund for the fire department to pay for part-time salaries. Full-time salaries are being paid out of the levy, which is on a separate account. So, again, I'm just sharing that with you just so you can get an idea of looking down each of those appropriations, approximately what we have spent on a year-to-date basis.
Thank you for explaining that.
And if you want, like I said, it's a lot to ingest. We just got it shortly before. We can put it back on the agenda next month if you have any more questions.
So, Mr. Mosby, you mentioned 202, and my pages are in order. So if you could tell me what page 202 was on.
Well, I don't, if I said 202, I'm not,
Did
I think what I
202
was looking at, yeah, I mean, I was looking at account 102,
Oh, 102.
correct, which is the fire department. And I was looking at it specifically in the general fund as opposed to the levy fund.
Okay, and what page is that on? Because those numbers
Page-
that you called out, I can't.
Page 2, if you look at page
Okay.
2, what I was sharing earlier is that the sum total for Department 101, which is the police department, I'm sorry, let me speak into the microphone, is on page 1 at the bottom, is Department 101, which is the entire police department. And then on page, on the second page, appropriation 102, which is the fire department. And that's what I was referring to.
Okay, thank you.
You guys have any questions?
Actually,
Madam
I
Chair.
have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question. I don't usually ask, but I'm gonna amuse myself and try to understand this today. So you mentioned that there are 2 reports. I only seem to have one. Am I missing or not understanding something? Probably not
Well,
understanding something.
we have the fuller one. He has a shortened version that you created for yourself.
I don't know.
No, I sent
Oh.
everybody
Okay,
what I-
right.
Mind
so-
if I Am I allowed to show you?
Yes.
If you flip through the first 4 pages,
Okay.
Oh, they may be all stapled
yeah,
together.
they're all, I
Okay,
think that's
gotcha.
it. So
Okay,
slip
so one,
1,
this,
2,
okay,
3,
3.
4, and then we start at 1 again.
Ah,
This
okay,
is the thick report that he's
Okay.
referring to.
okay, all right. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Madam Chair, I do apologize, but if I may, I did want to go back. Mr. Wald had asked a question, and for the benefit of you, Councilmember Alexander, I do want to give a brief update or kind of background to make sure that everybody is brought up to speed as to where we are. So I joined the city as a administrator in May of 2019. At the time that I had come in, there was an soon-to-be outgoing finance manager. And she left in October. When she left, I had hired a temporary finance manager from a temporary firm. And when he was kind of doing his review, he had noticed that there was an out-of-balance situation. I believe at that time, we brought this to the attention of the then finance chair. So at the end of the year, which is what Mr. Wall was asking about, at the end of the year, we are supposed to file, every municipality is supposed to file what they call a Hinkle Report, which is basically a summary of our financial transactions into the state system. He was attempting to kind of discover how the root of the out-of-balance situation. He was not able to do that. He left to go on vacation. I was under the impression at the time that even though he couldn't find the out-of-balance, that he had already filed the report, which he knew had to be filed. When he came back, I discovered that he had not filed the transaction. By that time, we'd already hired a full-time finance manager. So with that, we had our newer finance manager for about a year, who came in and certainly did also help, but at the same time, we still had this out-of-balance transaction. I think probably what helped us a little bit was the fact that unfortunately COVID hit, but with that at the same time, we had the benefit of getting the CARES Act money, and then of course last year we got the Recovery Act funds. But nonetheless, 2019 had not been filed, and then when our then finance manager was attempting to file 2020, we really couldn't do that because we didn't have a final 2019 report. So it was at that time that I was talking to the state auditors, and so they then made the recommendation of hiring an independent accountant, which we did. And that is the person that's the person, Robin, that we're talking about. She's with an accounting firm. It took her about 6 months to get through 2019. Also at that time, I did want to remind council that we had been really without a finance manager for about 4 months through that time as well. So Kirsten joined in January of 2022. Robin was already underway, so when she came in, Robin had already started. We made it through 2019, had that report submitted. It was our hope originally to get finished, and this is where Mr. Wald's question comes into play. We had talked to the auditors, and we were hoping that we would be able to get everything done by April the 30th. While we did get reconciliations done here locally, she was not able to get everything. She got the reconciliations, but she wasn't able to get the report submitted by April 30th. However, because we had been in touch with the auditor's office, which we've been in touch with them ever since, they did agree that they would postpone this letter. And I do want to take a minute to describe this letter as well. So what they do is, if the reports are not filed, or the state says that they don't have enough information to audit us, they have a declaration that they declare unauditable. It does not mean that the finances are in bad shape. It simply means either one of two things. The one, the financial reports had not been submitted, so there was nothing for them to audit, or two, and this was a part of this case, was there may be an out of balance situation that could not be resolved, and so because of that, they would declare a municipality unauditable. If a municipality is declared unauditable, what that means is that basically they have 90 days after that declaration in order to submit the reports. What I can also tell council is that because we already had 2019 submitted, the Ohio auditor state has already begun the biennial process of auditing our 2019 report. So that audit process is already underway. So basically, after Friday, barring any unforeseen circumstances, once the report is filed, they will then continue with the audit for 2019 and 2020.
You guys okay? Do you guys want an opportunity to put this back on the agenda next month, or you good? Go ahead.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Mr. Mosby, do we have any rough estimate as to how long the state takes to audit, review the 2019 or 2020 report?
It probably would not take more than a couple of weeks to a month. I think the last time when I first got here, there was a different firm that was auditing our reports, and I think that took them about 2 to 3 weeks at the most to get it done.
Okay. If there aren't any questions, I want to move to Ohio checkbook.
Madam Chair, will the budget be on next month's committee meeting?
That's up to you all. I don't have any questions. I met with them already.
Sure, why not?
Okay, I'll give you guys a chance to look at it. We'll put it back on the agenda if you guys are feeling the need or questions. I encourage that we send questions ahead of time, because I'm telling you what we have on the precipice. We really are gonna need our hour to really dig in. So I would hope that if you have time in the next month to dig in, send those questions to Mr. Mosby, if you don't mind copying myself, just so I can stay attuned to what's kind of floating out there, so I can stay connected with what's on the agenda. But we've got some things that we really need to dig into. So if you have questions and you're looking at the document, I would just encourage them to first start with emails, giving them a chance to respond.
And I will say this again, I know I've stated it in the past, but if any council member does have questions, we can do that. But I would also encourage council members to contact us to sit down with us if that is needed, because we'd be more than happy to do that. I do want to make sure that the lines of communication do stay open, Madam Chair, but especially for newer Councilmember Alexander, if you have time, then yeah, we would certainly like to sit down with you. I think that Madam Chair has clearly stated that there's a lot that's going to be going on, especially this year with this transition from the CMI to UAN. It's going to be very, very busy. So if anybody does have any questions, then I would encourage that. Thank you.
And I want to compliment everybody. I feel like this group does look at their email. They do get things done, but if we do focus on getting that done a little bit more, we can move our in-person time along. I don't think that we're bad at it, so let's just keep that momentum going, and just feel free to handle financial things that way also. I mean, and I'm not opposed to us, I talk to people at work all the time when we kill meetings all the time, just getting things done through email. So if we can do that on the questions, and loop us all in. I mean, if you want to talk to Mr. Mosby directly, I am asking that you include me just because it's on, and I can stay abreast of what's going to be on the agenda, but we can get a lot of those questions solved. So I'm going to say tentatively, let's put that back on the agenda for next month to give us time to dig into it. So that's that. And then the March report. Clearly, they're having a private conversation. No, just joking.
I think she just talked about the March report, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
checkbook.
didn't mean that. Ohio checkbook. Sorry. Ohio checkbook. That's them too.
Right, of course, with the Ohio checkbook, that is just what it is. That's what it says. It's an open book to our finances, which is on the auditor's page. I will need to reach out and get login information and get approved through the Ohio auditors to have an account. I believe probably one of my predecessors probably did have an account. I just don't have any of the information they used. So I will just have to, that's on my checklist here to have that, get, you know, all the things I need for that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So if you've dug into it, then you probably recognize that there have been no reports since 2019, according to what I could find.
Now, I did look at that briefly today, because after I got the the agenda, and I did see where, you know, there are some balances in there, but I didn't have time to just deep dive into everything. So it seems like it's like a running balance, but I'm not sure how that even works since nothing's been
wasn't either.
uploaded.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I think that when you look at the Ohio Open Checkbook, it's not quite exactly what it seems. Basically, all it does is show the checks that we have produced. So it doesn't show credit card transactions. It does not show EFT transactions. All it does is just show the checks that we have written. So it is information. I'm not sure how effective that would be. It would almost basically be like as if we gave you a report that only showed the amount of money that we paid via check. And there's a lot of money that we pay that is not by check, so which is why we give the monthly report. So.
Okay. Any questions there? That was on your agenda. I want to make sure you got all your questions. Okay. The recreation operational budget, and I'm gonna let them have this again too. I thought she was gonna be here tonight.
She was, however, I did speak with the mayor, so the mayor and myself and the new recreation director are going to get together before we submit that to you.
Okay, so we're gonna go through that, and then we'll put that back on there. The staff vacancy, and that, did you guys, are we interviewing candidates, or, I'm sorry, I say we, but I don't mean that. I mean you. I just mean us collectively as a group, sorry.
As a city.
Yes, I don't mean me.
I know our administrative assistant has been out for a few days, so I'm not sure, I haven't seen it on Facebook, but she was gonna upload it on Facebook and Indeed. I haven't gotten any contacts back from that as of yet, but that may come into her account since she, you know, posts the positions. So as soon as she gets back in, I will go over that with her.
Okay. And that, I just wanna make sure we're on target, and that's work is, cause we're, I just don't wanna get behind again, right? So, cause we had all those extra people we had to kind of pour into to make sure we stayed in target from people not being, in positions. So you,
I'll leave it.
okay.
Madam Chair, who is the administrative assistant that's posting positions?
Well, we only have one, and that would be Ms. Miller, Nicole Miller.
Nicole Miller, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, what are the positions?
It's a clerk, accounts receivable
Accounts
clerk.
receivable.
Okay.
So then if you guys don't have any questions on that, I'll move swiftly to the next one. And I'm gonna have Kirsten jump in here, but I kinda wanna explain, this is one that I put on the agenda. And if you notice, it says, building renovations, and before, it was, council chamber renovations. So, don't shoot me, because we gotta have a discussion. But this building is jacked up. We need to do something about it.
I say we tear it down.
I don't know if tearing it down is where we want to go,
I know.
but this building is an embarrassment. I want you to go to Lockland, Reading, all the other smaller municipalities,
I have pictures.
and nothing looks quite as ugly as our building.
Exactly.
So I am proposing that we take the challenge on of making this building a true municipal building with a slight twist, that we use a lot of the other portion of the building as an income-bearing something for us. We need more income. We need to not put that weight on our taxpayers, and we need to do something, but it's gonna take real money. We can't pay for it out of our budget. That looks like bonds. I asked her to talk about bonds and what that looks like for us. You look like you, go ahead.
Madam Chair, which part of the building, are you talking about the part that got condemned where where the gymnasium is?
The whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair,
Oh, okay.
just for clarification,
Condemned part? Oh.
it hasn't been declared condemned, but is not usable because that half of the building, the roof is in very poor shape. It was not repaired when this half was repaired. And because of that, there are several other items that would have to be fixed in order to do that.
I was just thinking that we should take care of this side of the building first.
So
You
you
know,
are,
because this is the main part where everyone's offices are, and, you know, we're getting air conditioning. I would work on upgrading this first and that second. That's just my opinion.
but you would spend so much more money doing it that way. I don't have any problem bringing in the research so that you know you can't, it's like, well, they did it. They fixed one half of the roof, but
That was through a loan.
yeah.
I was a
But
citizen
you
when
you don't fix half of your steps, or half of your car breaks on one side of the car, not the other.
Reason why they fixed this roof and not both roofs, at that time, they did not have the money. I was actually a citizen when they had to declare an emergency for that. I was in the audience.
And so one of the things the reason I wanted to make sure that we brought it up at this meeting is because we are getting our finances in order, if you will. Not to say that they were in complete disorder, that's not my implication, but we can do some things with where we are. And in the past, we had not been in this situation because we didn't have resources, so we were running on E. And I want to try to continue with this financial committee to continue to prosper our city, and that's can only come by income-bearing things. So we have to figure out what that looks like. And one of the things that we can do is, while we are beautifying this building for the sake of, our meetings, we can incorporate some other things that would help us bring in resources. And that looks like, we don't have all the ideas. I'm not proposing that I do. We can do feasibility studies or whatever it takes to kind of kick the ideas out there. There are a lot of good ideas out there that I feel like would be tremendous in terms of our ability to bring in resources, but we have to consider it. So in order to consider that, there's just no way we're going to be able to pay that out of our pocket. We're going to have to get some lending.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mary Jo.
So there's a couple of things that I would like to point out. So we did replace this side of the roof, but we did fix at that time, we fixed that side of the roof. So it's not like we totally
Abandoned it. Right,
abandoned that
okay.
half. At least that was my understanding of what was happening. We fixed, patched that half and replaced this half.
And that may be my misunderstanding because I wasn't here when that happened, and I know that that side of the building is unusable. So I just assumed that that may have had something to do with it. But if it was repaired on that side and replaced on this side, that's fine. But we still need to do something with that side.
So I also thought, I don't know if it ever got finished, but the process was started to turn that half of the building over to the CIC. So I'm not so sure that that's even city property at this point. I don't know. And then
I mean, Madam Chair, I would be honest with you, I'm not sure that that has anything to do with what we're talking about. The building and the property was divided, because that was one of the things that was asked about whether or not the property had been divided. It was subdivided into 3 separate plots. However, regardless of that, even if the CIC had it, the CIC, based on the amount of money that they have, wouldn't be able to get a loan based on their assets to repair that. What I wanted to, before Ms. Vanderburg began to talk a little bit about bonds, there was something that I did want to explain, and you brought it up, and that is that in the past, and this showed up on the financial reports, there have been 2 times when the city borrowed money, and specifically for this building. One was in 2012, when they purchased bonds to improve the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and they did a few other things. The next time was in 2017, when they did work on the roof. I was on the committee that actually proposed that the whole building be done, and at that time, if they had done it, it would have been about $1.3 million, but that was turned down. What I was going to tell you is that according to state law, cities have they can borrow up to 5.5% of their 5.5%, which represents the unvoted debt and of their property value. So when you look at our property value in North College Hill, the sum total, the cumulative total is $125 million. So in other words, 5.5% of $125 million is $6.875 million, which means we, council, could vote to approve up to $6.875 million in unvoted debt. Right now, we don't even have $1 million of unvoted debt. Yes, we do have a portion of the bonds that were purchased in 2012, and then we had these other bonds that were purchased, roughly $300,000, that were purchased in 2017. But there is still a lot, even if this side, which we've done some estimates already, and to do a complete renovation of that would be approximately $2.2 million. But that's still well under the ceiling. So before Ms. Vanderburg gave her presentation, I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of that.
I have a question on that. So I think it is important that we do at least know, is that portion of the building, does it belong to CIC?
It does not technically right now, no.
Was it scheduled to transfer?
Well, it was parceled, so that part of it was done. So I guess the only part that would be left would be that it would just have to be given over to deeded over to the CIC. If that is going to be the case.
So have we already committed to that, is
It's
what I'm
been
asking?
separated. Isn't that what you're saying?
The building,
It's
right,
two
the
different parcels.
property, this is one large piece of property, 5.3 acres. It is, per a council request several years ago, it was the entire property was parceled into 3 different parcels. So that has been done. So if council does say we're going to transfer this, I will tell you as administration, I would not recommend it. I can tell you that right now. That part of the building was actually leased out, and this is before you got here, but that part of the building was actually leased out to a nonprofit organization. It was leased to them for $1, and in the agreement was supposed to be that they would take care of it because it's being leased to them for $1. They did bring activities in, which is true. They brought a very nice troupe in that performed plays and things here, but that part of the building was never taken care of. And so as a result, it began to deteriorate to the point where the players on the hill ended up leaving. Of course, now there's no one else in. Now, I will say that in fairness, and I mean, I'm saying this, but the mayor can speak to it herself. I know that she said that she wants that side of the building open. We have done some work on how much it would cost approximately. Quite frankly, I just had the group in here so that we can get a whole, literally today, they were in here so that we can get an actual cost estimate from them based on today's dollars as to what that would be. So that is something that can be done, and if council would vote on it, that's debt that can be incurred through the purchase of bonds, in which case I would allow Ms. Vanderburg to speak on it.
Mr. Mos, oh, you were next.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, what is CIT?
It's the North College Hill Community Improvement Corporation. It's a 501c3. It's the name of our community development corporation. It is basically, you would look at this organization as kind of an arm of the government. It is not a government entity, but basically they can act as an agent for the city in certain things.
Can you explain the process, the 2.2 million for this building with bonds? Is there an interest amount? Is there a loan? How long would the loan be, an interest amount? I've never taken out bond loans. I'm not familiar with that procedure. Can you explain that to us?
Before he answers that, I'm going to wait because I know that's part of what Kirsten's going to answer. Are there any other questions? I guess, and I don't, when you say partial out, you mean separate, but does that mean ownership?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying, in order for that ownership that Ms. Zorb was referring to occur, the property had to be parceled, is what I'm saying. So the 5.3 acres, which this building sits on, had to be parceled out, which means that a portion of it had to be divided up, and that is what had occurred. If you look on the auditor's website, you'll find 3 different parcels for this particular piece of land.
The city would still own it, so they're just on parcel 1, 2, 3. And if we say, hey, we're just gonna deed over to CIC parcel 3, the shifting or switching didn't occur, apparently.
Got it.
It was
So
parcel.
technically,
The city still owns it.
got it. That's what I was just trying to make clear, because I want to be clear about what we're aiming towards and what we can use and what we can't, so.
Madam Chair, one last question. So currently, it's just sitting there, just getting worse.
So I was here when they talked about just doing different parts. We all know a patch doesn't work. I don't do any of that type of work, but I do know that water is one of the most strong currents or forces. So if you patch, I know that patch is done by now. I've been over there. As a matter of fact, I've gone over there after rain, and you could still see wherever they patch. So it will find another pinhole to this. So I don't think it's wise for us to continue to have a building just sitting there that's attached to this building and do nothing with it. I believe you have to spend some money to make some money, and I think, not just for us, but for our citizens and for our community, we need to do something instead of just having an eyesore.
And I agreed, and I think, like I said, you know, we were living and we were just trying to survive through a very scarce budget. And so now we're not in that space. We're not gonna take from what our existing resources, but borrow so that we can produce some income to, you know, do more than one thing, beautify and create something that would bring resources back into our city without putting the weight on the people that live here is the goal.
Madam Chair, and one of the things that we have been in contact with a couple of banks, I won't call them lenders, just to get ideas. And if I'm not mistaken, one or two of them were interested. Was it one?
Oh, yeah, there were several.
There were several of the names of the banks that we went to, but it's just a matter of having the right numbers. I had talked to our finance manager, and just having the right numbers. One of them wanted to know the numbers, so I think there's interest for it. I just think, you know, creatively, I don't know. I just think it's not wise for us to continue to have a building sit there, knowing that the water's gonna find its way back over here. It's just a matter of time. Not that it matters and it's irrelevant, but I was not in agreement with just doing half of the building for that reason. You know, and I think it was not like it was a whole lot more to fix both sides. So,
Madam Chair, I'm not going to debate this again about what all things cost, so do we have any idea what kind of revenue-producing businesses you would have? Is there any idea?
There are, yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
you don't need to name them, I'm just hoping.
No, I wouldn't, and, you know, basically, what we would be looking at, actually, there's two things that have to be considered. If we went the route of what I would call municipal tax-free bonds, the option that Ms. Dukes-Dean mentioned would not be applicable. So I need to make that clear. In other words, if we're using tax-free bonds, meaning that whoever invests in them would not have to pay taxes, that portion of the building would have to be used for community purposes. And I've talked to an attorney about this, and basically what that means is it can generate revenue for us, but it would generate revenue on a community basis. So we would rent the rooms out on a first-come, first-served basis. The larger gymnasium could be used for larger community purposes, and we can rent that out all the time. So yes, it can generate revenue, but it wouldn't necessarily be businesses that would have leases in there. So I want to make
Oh,
that
I didn't
clear.
say that. Did I say
No,
that?
I-
Well, you,
Oh, okay.
well, when you said economic, I want to make it clear that I had talked to them about that possibility, and depending on the types of bonds, which Kirsten will get into in a moment, I'm saying that may dictate what kind of businesses we can do. However, let me just say this. So two things. Number one, I don't know that that is necessarily a bad thing because we need community space. I think everybody here knows that, number one. Number two, as I mentioned, I just had the architect and the construction people in here today. Literally, we walked through that side. Now, the good news, as far as I'm concerned, was that even though, yes, the mayor's absolutely correct, because you had to wade through water to get in there, but he's actually said to me, I've dealt with much worse. This can still be renovated. It can still be salvaged. So if council is committed to it and has the will to do it, that is something that we can get done. So I did want to make sure that everybody was aware of this.
I guess that my plea to us council members is one that I think I didn't know until he just said that it was salvageable, but I think that means a lot to us. I also think that, like I said, our building's super ugly, and this is our opportunity to beautify it. I also think that it is, we can create something great for the community. And honestly, I would really like to see, not that this is not a shot to the past, but it's just a time where we can do something very good for our city. And I would love to be a part of that. I would love for all of you to be a part of that. So, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I wasn't here in the past. I can't really criticize that. I can only say what I think we need to do forward to kind of put us in a healthy space and set precedents for those that come after us to continue on what we did as a legacy. So that's my only plea. And I guess I'm a little bit kind of like using a persuasive tone because it is going to cost us money, and we don't like to spend money. I get it, and that's fair. We're supposed to be gatekeepers to keeping our city financially fit. But this is a part of that, and we're at the place where we need to do something. And the fact that it's salvageable, if we wait much longer, it will not be salvageable, and we'll have a much larger problem on our hands. We won't maybe not even be able to be here anymore. So I just want you to consider that, and then I'm going to let her, if no one else, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I do want to say that I'm probably the only one on council who has raised my children through this school when it was a school, and it was provided its services, and now it's time. I mean, I agree, this building isn't. Oh, you did too, that's right.
I did too. My kids went here, and they walked right across, well, my
Oh,
one
okay.
kid.
So I'm, I have sweet memories. I don't need to keep looking at an old ugly building to keep those memories. So, but I have some questions that probably won't be answered right now. So I'd just like to say, do we know, or could we find out how many years we have left on the roof and how much is that? Are there any other outstanding debts like the Public Works building? I know I'd asked about that before, but the answer wasn't actually clear. How many years and how much do we have left on that? What else?
Well, let me at least deal with the two. I apologize if the answer wasn't clear, because I do remember you asking about that, and I had mentioned that in the last report that we had given, and Mr. Dukes-Dean, I think it was the one that you passed out, I showed that those were the bonds from 2012. So those bonds were the bonds that were used to build that Public Works. And so, yes, we do still have some that we do have some money that we owe on that, and that is on that debt schedule. The 2017 bonds were bonds that were specifically for this side of the roof to have this side repaired, which was a roughly $276,000. When you say how much, I believe that the average roof, or a roof for a building this size would probably last about 25 years. So if you look at that and you figure that we got it in 2017, I believe you and Ms. Zorb were both on
Correct.
council at the time. So that's about 5 years. So that means we'd probably have about 20 years left on it.
So, but when we're talking about this renovation, so that's all going to go away, but we still owe the money on it. That, I mean, I don't know how to completely
But I don't think you
renovate.
need to.
I don't think that the renovation would mean that the building would go away. The only way that that would happen, and that would be a radical process, I mean, it could be done, but that would be demolishing the whole building. So that's not
and
what
that's
I
why
was
I'm not-
referring to.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not necessarily in support of demolishing the old building, which is why I like the language salvage
Yes.
what we have and kind of go from there.
Right, and so that's what I meant. So if my word choice was bad, I apologize. Salvageable does not mean for what I was talking to them about. What it meant was we can renovate that side and bring it back into working condition. That's really what
And
that
then
meant.
update the outside. I mean,
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
It's so many things that people can do
Right.
to update. Like, I don't know, I love all these like painted brick houses.
I hate
They-
the painted brick houses, but I know it's coming.
But it does modernize it with
It
just
does.
just a little bit of paint. Not saying that. I'm just really saying that you can work with what we have.
Right.
I live in, my house is almost 100 years old. It's just it's a constant work of restoration. Since I've lived there, I've been lived there 15 years. So this building can be the same. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew the reason why I put it here and replaced it with chamber renovations is because if we do this, it would not make sense to renovate the chambers and then try to figure out what we're going to do with the rest of the building. So it would delay our chamber renovation so that we can put our energies towards and finances towards talking about the renovations for the entire building as opposed to just the chambers. You're smiling. You have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
How far, how far?
Oh, I'm sorry.
When are we gonna get to my question from like 15 minutes ago?
Oh, we're talking about the bonds. We're getting there. This
Okay,
is all.
just wanna make
No.
sure.
She's on schedule to get there.
I'm easily distracted and I'm just like,
Well,
My
before
question
we
would be
go
answered,
there, we
and I
needed to
can't-
kind of, she's on track. She's got the answer to your question. And so we're coming back to that, but
thank you.
there's a lot of foundational things that we kind of needed to talk about before we can even get to bonds. Because if it doesn't make sense to anybody, there's no reason to even talk about what she's got. So go ahead.
So from a very personal Mary Jo kind of level, how far off are we pushing off this AC?
The AC's gonna happen in May.
No, again,
Mary
that's a
Jo
good
and-
question.
Mary
What
Jo
I
and
had
Erica.
mentioned,
Okay.
what I
Mary Jo,
mentioned
Mary
there,
Jo.
so let me remind everyone, what I mentioned was that that based on the schedule that we have for renovating this, the air conditioner would be part of it. I also mentioned that that would be during the summer, and that council would then move temporarily to the Proctor Center at the Clovernook Center for the Blind. And that would begin the first meeting in June. And then the goal is to have everything open by the first council meeting in September, which means that summer session would be over at the Proctor Center.
At the risk of upsetting Ms. Blythe, I just have a question about that. So how much is it gonna cost us to go to the Proctor Center? Because, they like to overcharge for things. And, I would rather meet in the parking lot than pay them a bunch of money that we can spend, right, that we can, something. Meet in somebody's backyard or
Madam
something.
Chair, I will say that Clovernook Center for the Blind has been a very good civic partner for us, and they have offered to do it at no charge.
Yay. All right. Are you guys okay? 'Cause I wanna, go ahead.
One more question. So,
I'm trying to get to
I
Ms.
know,
Blythe's
and I'm so
question.
sorry. But
She'll come down here and get y'all.
Okay, well, I probably, Lori, I promise, one more question and then she's up, I promise. So I know Mr. Mosby and I have spoke about this many, many times, and surprisingly, we don't agree. So we're looking at rental cars for the fleet for the police department, and they are getting 2 or 3 in the next 18 months, maybe?
Okay,
So
this is related to the roof?
this is related to the roof.
Okay.
So
Leasing up.
because it's a minuscule amount compared to what we want to spend on this building, would it be considered to purchase those cars at the end of their lease so that we're not continually making car payments?
Okay, you're gonna have to connect that to this building renovation.
I think what she's asking
It's
is if
bleeding money.
if we don't, in other words, if we take the lease and continue the lease, we would have to pay out X number of dollars. The difference, if I may, Ms. Underwood, is I think the question that you're asking is where would that money come from? And the answer to that question is if it is money that is dedicated to the police, you would be correct. It would have nothing to do with this money, and that's exactly what we're talking about. The money for the leases would be in the police department. Now, it is true that if we somehow purchased under the assumption that we purchased the vehicle at the end of the lease, which is typically like, it's a small amount, that we wouldn't have a lease payment that we would have to make. So, for example, if it's $8,000 every 6 months, we wouldn't have to make that $8,000 payment. So I guess conceivably, council could say, well, we'll take that $8,000 from the police department and perhaps put it towards something else. That's not what I would necessarily recommend, but that could conceivably happen.
No, I want to stand corrected on this. I had no issue, I had no inkling to take that money and put it somewhere else.
Okay.
I knew it come out of the police department.
Yes.
But in whole, collectively, it's still money that the city is paying out in the whole budget. So, if we continually lease cars forever and ever, and now we're thinking about getting a new building to pay for 30 years, and we're still paying on a roof, and we're still paying, it just seems like a lot of money going
Output.
out.
that's why we need to keep in mind that when we doing this building, we're not just beautifying, we are bringing in income, we're
I-
returning.
I understand that. Well, anyway,
And so that's
I'm probably
all-
just whistling to the trees at this
No-
point.
No, what I would say is, it's fruitful discussion. It's what we need to talk about in the coming weeks. Duly noted, we'll continue to have that discussion, but for the sake of time, let her describe the bonds, and we can continue that. That's I mean, you don't have to lose your fire for whatever, you feel is, you're passionate about, but
Right.
it's just not gonna
it
be
won't
solved
go
tonight, so.
Ms. Blythe? So I may need to apologize because I think that I misunderstood what Mr. Mosby was asking me to do as far as the bonds. I thought he was asking me to explain what a bond was, not the different types of bonds that we could get. In the past, when I've worked with bonds, I worked hand in hand with my drain commissioner and with my attorney. And we got our bonds through several individuals. So when we did that, they're much easier than loans because we could negotiate the interest rates. And with the banks, they have a set interest rate. And with the bonds that we worked with our individuals or corporations, we could narrow down the terms. We could pay it off without penalty, because I do know some of the loans that you get, if you pay it early, there is a penalty.
Can you break it down even more basic, like who's purchasing the bonds? We are?
Yes.
And then how
To
long
fix,
does?
to fix, as an example, to renovate this building. And those terms are negotiated with the person who is funding that. So let's say we only want to do 30 years. I'm just throwing a number out there, 30 years. And we say, oh, hey, look, we got, revenue in from, from the gym, from people, renting out. Hey, heck, I think we could pay this off in 15 years. So we could go ahead and pay that off and not get penalized. Now, if you went to a bank, they'd be like, no. Not all the time, but generally there are very set terms with a loan. So I have not researched as far as the different types of bonds, which I can certainly do, but I was just.
Question is kind of what is the average, is there an interest rate, or does that just
That
vary
is-
all over the place?
Well, that's negotiable with the person that has the bond.
Okay.
I mean, let's say the bank's at 4%. Those lenders, when you do, an RFP or however you bid this out, could say, hey, we can come in at 3%, or hey, we'll do 2%, but, it's only be 15 years opposed to 3.5% at 30 years.
Okay.
So there are people or corporations where you can work really hand in hand to try to find the best fit for your needs.
And then, Mr. Mosey, the 2.2 million was just for this building only? It didn't include renovating? It was for renovating this building, not the one next door?
It was for renovating that side of the building.
Just the one side?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Right, but there's a lot of work in there. I will say this, that perhaps this is just providential, but I have been in contact with a financial advisor who deals with bonds. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me slow down. He's coming into town next week and had asked if he would be able to present at the next council meeting. If it pleases council, this gentleman, Ms. Blythe, he specializes in bond issuance, so he would be able to explain some of the things that, and I will publicly apologize because I didn't want to surprise Ms. Vanderberg on that. And when she was talking, that she brought up a great point. When she was dealing with the drains in Michigan, that was a specific type of bond that she would be dealing with because they were doing construction work, and their bonds were, I would suspect, are probably municipal tax-free bonds
Yes.
because of the work you're doing. So it's a bit different than what we are talking about here. She raises a good point. There are two markets that you can sell bonds to. One is what they call the open or the public market, and then they also have private markets that you can do, and institutions also purchase bonds. And that's what happened at the last bond issue. I believe in the bond issue in 2017, those bonds were purchased by Fifth Third Bank. So Fifth Third Bank is the bond holder in those cases. So they hold the bonds, they give us the money, and then we make the agreement to pay them back at, a particular rate and during a particular time, over a certain X number of years. Does that help? And if it pleases council, again, I can contact him and ask him to come and he can do a
You say
appraisal.
in town, is that? what
He's
you-
he's from out of town. He's actually moving up this way, but right now he's currently living in the south. But he is coming up to visit. This will be his market, and so I had asked him, surprisingly, a couple months ago, if he might be interested in coming to speak to council. He said yes. He just literally contacted me today. So if council is interested, I can have him come and do a brief presentation on that.
I don't have any issue with him doing a presentation.
I think it should be done.
Definitely. What I don't, my only fear is, I know that would be his new territory. I don't want to, does that kind of create a relationship that we're definitely going to use him?
I don't think so.
Okay.
He's
Not that I'm opposed.
Yeah, his market is not just here. I mean, it's Michigan, Indiana. That would be his new market.
I welcome it. You guys are okay with that?
Yes.
So are we okay to move forward? I just want
Ms.
to make
Blythe,
sure
are
that
you-
we are, that you now know.
That's what I wanted to.
That delays our council chamber reno, but I just really believe wholeheartedly this is something we need to do. I would rather salvage than dilapidate,
100%.
so.
I had one more question.
No, you don't get any unless it's about the bonds.
I have one more question. What is, it's a really weird question, it's just a kind of a generalization. We probably have 3 things going on that we want to have going on, which would be remodel this part, that part, and then, was it called the car repo lot?
Impound lot.
How would all 3, impound, I'm sorry, I'm bad with words. How would all 3 of these coincide without driving everybody crazy? Because if you're remodeling, you're gonna be using one of these roads to go back and forth, and you know what I'm saying? Developing a lot back there and remodeling, that's a lot of activity. What type of, have you thought about what type of scheduled time frame that would be?
Yes. The answer is yes. I actually told the contractors today specifically that the council chambers needed to be done by the end of the summer. So that may that may change depending on what council is saying. But that was the goal for them to have the plans in place and everything so that they could begin construction of this part of it in June. Now, the other side, they're working, actually, they were working something for that as well. It'll be a couple weeks out for that. But I should be able to have that information before the next committee meeting, which,
Can we communicate that via email?
I mean, sure.
I would like to start getting some of these things settled. I mean, I don't know if you all I work remotely. I never have meetings, that we don't have to wait until our next committee meeting to kind of get things rolling, right?
We kind of do because
Okay.
of the sunshine laws.
Because what?
Sunshine laws.
Yeah, we can't do anything.
We can't really conduct business.
Conversation.
And have conversations.
But I
Receive
mean, in terms of the information,
Oh, okay.
just in terms of the information, we can get the
And then don't
information rolling.
reply.
So when we're here, our time is best utilized. That's what I'm saying. I wasn't
that makes sense.
disbarring meetings, but I'm saying we save a lot for the meetings, and then we can take those like groundwork conversations, the information for those groundwork conversations off off of our agenda, and focus on what we need to talk about. If you're okay with that.
I don't have a problem with
But the-
distributing the information, no.
But the main thing with us being a fiduciary is we will have to see all the pricing and everything and vote to agree with it. You know what I mean? Even though it's a good plan and everything, you always have to do the math and make sure, there's something, that everything's positive, but we just got to make sure that it's kind of within our budget and nothing, we don't want to bankrupt ourselves. But we do
Absolutely.
have to, it's like if you were remodeling your house, you don't just say, hey, come on in, get started.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
All right, with that being said, I'm gonna close that out and let's go to old business. Anybody have anything that they need to talk about in terms of old business?
I do. I don't know if it's old or new, but I'll try old.
Okay.
So there was a piece of legislation that we talked about at the last council meeting. We kind of talked about it. I thought you mentioned it at the public safety meeting, or I think it was the public safety meeting, that you mentioned it briefly, and then I put it on the agenda, and I had said, can we just send it to the budget meeting, because by the time we put it at the next public safety meeting, it's gonna be too late, or, we're gonna be running right up against our deadline. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. You're referring to a piece of legislation that was, that I did submit, as you pointed out. It is a resolution that the county needs for us to be able to receive grant money from SORTA, the Southwest Ohio Regional Transit Authority. So primarily it's an administrative matter. However, that is the documentation that they need so that we would be able to receive the grant money from SORTA. That is what you're referring to.
And what is that grant for?
This would be the grant money for 2023. So the grant application process is now open for municipalities to submit their proposals. And I think I shared with you all that our proposal is going to be the west side of Galbraith Road. And so that would be it. The process is the grant application window is open until June 30th, I believe. So after June 30th, we would not be able to apply for that money.
Okay. So we need a vote on that.
Yes, which is why it was on the agenda originally. We did the same thing. We had to do the same thing last year, although last year was the first year that SORTA had done this.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, normally we do have it in front of us. Is it okay for us to proceed, or do you need to send it to us? And
I mean, I don't know what other questions needed to be asked of that. I didn't know that it was. I don't believe it's too complicated. It was just that we put it on the agenda so that it would just need to be passed. It's not giving. It's not. The resolution itself is not telling me to accept any money or anything like that. It's a prerequisite that we need if we want to receive grant money from SORTA. Now, if we don't want to receive it, then we don't have to do it. But sorry,
Mr. Mosby.
I see Ms. Underwood's face.
Was this SORTA, was that to repair parts of Galbraith Road going westward? Was
Correct.
it repair Galbraith Road, okay, great, okay, thank you.
I'm pretty sure that you all have been on Galbraith Road West, and you know how Galbraith Road East is nice. Galbraith Road West is not. And, so we, myself and our engineering consultant, we both immediately agreed after we were on the meeting that that would be the best use of those funds. So that's what that is.
all right, so you guys want to vote?
We
I don't
can't
think
vote
we
in the
vote
meeting.
here.
That's what I was asking, because I'm
No, we
confused
just-
about that.
So
This
I
was already
just-
on the
yeah,
agenda.
It was on the council agenda, but I wanted to make sure that it was really fleshed out in a committee. And
Oh,
we
so
just
that by the
wouldn't-
time we go back, got it, okay.
Right.
I lost my my confusion is clear now.
So yes, I mean, I guess to Ms. Underwood's point, I don't know what other questions people may have about that. It's a requirement of SORTA, basically. They want that in order for them to give us the money.
So when it's on the legislation in another week, it'll mention SORTA and West Galbraith Road. So we'll see it and we'll know just what it is. Okay,
It was the first reading this past Monday.
okay, thank you.
Got it, okay. Any other new business? That was old business. We're moving on to new business. All right. Well, I'm okay. If you guys are okay, we can, oh, I know what I forgot, new business. I did not, you guys got the, meeting minutes. I sent them out with that. I just want to make sure you all got them because some people said they didn't get the email. Okay. Well, if everybody's clear, we can officially adjourn.
Do you want to see if everyone approves the minutes and then we can get them submitted?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry. Next
Um,
steps.
Do you guys look through the minutes for a second and then let me know if you approve of the minutes? The public hearing threw me off.
They look good to me.
No, they look very good.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, well, I think we made some progress here. Thank you all, and we will adjourn officially at 8:49 p.m.
Yay.
Yay.